Just picture it. Bengaluru, June 4th, 2025. The
Correct.
city is just alive,
Yeah.
absolutely buzzing, draped in red and gold, the air thick with excitement, fireworks going off. It felt like every street corner was its own party. And why? Because after 18 long years, Royal Challengers Bengaluru RCB, they'd finally done it, their first IPL title. The wait was over. Pure, unadulterated euphoria.
An incredible moment for the city, truly. That kind of shared joy after such a long wait is powerful.
It really was. But then, almost in the same breath, that celebration, that peak joy, it just shattered. Right outside the M. Chinnaswamy Stadium, the planned victory parade turned into absolute tragedy.
A stampede.
A devastating turn from the highest high to the lowest low, practically instantaneous. Shocking is the only word. And in the aftermath, everyone was asking, how could this happen? Who was responsible?
Understandably so.
And now, just recently, on July 1st, 2025, we got a significant piece of that puzzle. The Central Administrative Tribunal, the CIT, delivered a ruling that's really starting to shed light on the accountability aspect.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what we're diving into today. We want to go beyond just recounting the events. We're looking at the why. Why did this happen? What does this ruling tell us about accountability, about event planning, especially with massive crowds?
Exactly. What are the lessons here?
Our goal is to offer some clarity on this really complex situation, and importantly, what it means for big public events moving forward, because this has implications well beyond Bengaluru.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit, back to June 4th. The victory itself, 18 years. You can't overstate what that meant.
No, it was monumental. A whole generation of fans had waited for that.
So the anticipation for a celebration, a parade, it was huge. People started gathering outside the Chinnaswamy Stadium pretty much immediately, right? Ready to welcome the team.
That was the plan. A joyous homecoming. Red and gold everywhere. Cheers, celebrations.
But the crowd just kept growing and growing.
And that's where things went tragically wrong. The numbers swelled far beyond, it seems, what anyone was truly prepared for. Estimates put it somewhere between 3 and 5 lakh people.
300,000 to 500,000 people.
Exactly. In that relatively confined area around the stadium, that kind of density is incredibly dangerous. Eyewitness accounts, reports, they all talk about this overwhelming surge of people.
And then the chaos, the stampede.
Yes,
Yeah.
leading to, tragically, 11 deaths and many, many injuries. When you have that concentration of people, even a small incident, a push, a stumble, can create a domino effect, a crushing wave. It's terrifyingly fast.
The fallout must have been immediate.
Oh, absolutely. Which brings us to the legal response and the CIAT ruling on July 1st. The Bangalore bench justice B.K. Shrivastava and Santosh Mehra.
And the big headline from that ruling.
Well, two really big things. First, they quashed the suspension of IPS officer Vikash Kumar Vikash. He was the additional commissioner of police for the West Zone at the time, a senior officer.
Right. Why was his suspension quashed?
The tribunal stated it was, and I'm quoting here, passed in a mechanical manner and lacked convincing materials. So essentially, they felt the suspension wasn't adequately justified by the evidence presented at that point. He was reinstated.
Okay, so that's significant for the police side of things. What was the other major finding?
This is perhaps the part that caught even more attention. The tribunal held RCB, the team itself, prima facie responsible for the large gathering.
Prima facie, meaning at first glance, based on the initial evidence.
Precisely. It's a legal term suggesting a strong initial finding of responsibility, subject to further investigation, of course. But the tribunal pointed directly at RCB.
Why? What was the reasoning?
It all seems to center on one critical action: the announcement of the victory parade on social media before getting the necessary consent from the police.
Ah, so they announced it publicly without official sign-off.
That's what the tribunal found. This lack of prior coordination, the sudden public announcement, it essentially bypassed the entire safety and permissions process.
So let's unpack that. RCB posts on social media, come celebrate with us. And suddenly
You have potentially hundreds of thousands of people heading towards the stadium, fueled by this official announcement, and the police, who need time to plan, to set up barricades, to manage traffic, to deploy officers, they're caught completely flat-footed.
they were blindsided.
Exactly. Reports mention that RCB, by going ahead without permits, essentially created a nuisance. And critically, sufficient time was not given to the police to prepare for that scale of crowd.
You can see the police's perspective there. They were probably already dealing with crowds from the win itself, right? From the night before?
Absolutely. They were managing the celebrations from the night of June 3rd right into June 4th. They were likely already stretched. Then this parade announcement drops publicly.
Making an already difficult situation almost impossible to manage safely.
It highlights this massive need for, well, just basic coordination. Event organizers, especially for something this big, have to work hand in glove with law enforcement from the very beginning. You can't just decide to have a parade for 500,000 people and announce it an hour beforehand.
It seems obvious, but
Yeah.
clearly.
Clearly, a breakdown happened, and it raises that huge question. What do you do when the actual turnout dwarfs expectations, especially when there's no lead time for proper safety planning? Social media amplifies everything so quickly now.
It really changes the game for event planning.
It has to. You need protocols that account for that instantaneous amplification.
Now, beyond the RCB finding, there were other legal movements too, weren't there, affecting other officials and the organizers?
Yes. It's important to note Vikash himself challenged his suspension quickly back on June 8th. And the tribunal didn't just reinstate him, they also called for a review of the suspensions of other senior officers.
Who else?
Bengaluru Police Commissioner B. Dayananda and the Central DCP Shekhar HT. A DCP is a Deputy Commissioner of Police, another key role. So the tribunal was suggesting a broader look at the command decisions, not just pinning it on one person initially.
Okay. And what about the organizers themselves, RCB and their partners?
Right, there was parallel action there. On June 12th, just over a week after the Stampede, the Karnataka High Court granted interim bail to 4 individuals. This included RCB's marketing head, Nikhil Sosel, and others from the event company DNA Entertainment Networks Private.
Interim bail, but with conditions.
Yes, significantly, they had to surrender their passports, which indicates the seriousness of the investigation into the organizational aspects. So you see scrutiny happening on multiple levels, police procedures and organizer responsibilities.
It paints a picture of shared, or at least interconnected, failures.
It does, and it sends a very, very clear message to anyone organizing large public events, particularly sports teams with huge followings.
Which is?
Get your permissions, have your safety plan locked down, coordinate with authorities, then you can announce it. Not the other way around. This incident, I think, will absolutely lead to much stricter checks and balances, especially in crowded cities like Bengaluru. The era of spontaneous, massive, unvetted celebrations might be over.
It probably needs to be.
Yeah.
Now, to really understand the gravity, it helps to put this in context with other crowd-related tragedies, doesn't it?
It really does, because sadly, this isn't a unique phenomenon. We can learn by comparing.
Like the Hathras Stampede, that was quite recent too.
Yes, July 2nd, 2024 in Uttar Pradesh. A religious gathering, estimated around 2.5 lakh people. Tragically, 121 people died there, mainly due to extreme overcrowding, and I believe a structure collapsing under the pressure. The core issue was density in a confined space.
And going further back, Hillsborough is often mentioned in these contexts.
Hillsborough, April 15th, 1989, in the UK. A football stadium disaster. Around 54,000 fans, 96 deaths. The primary cause there was identified as police crowd control failure, specifically opening an exit gate which led to fatal crushing in already full terraces.
So different immediate causes overcrowding, police error.
Exactly. But the common thread is the catastrophic failure to manage large numbers of people safely. Hathras shows the danger of sheer density overwhelming infrastructure. Hillsborough shows the critical importance of correct police procedures and communication during surges.
And Bengaluru.
Bengaluru seems to have elements of both, perhaps. The overwhelming numbers certainly fueled by that uncoordinated announcement, and a resulting situation where effective control became impossible for the authorities. It really underscores that managing crowds requires foresight, strict protocols, and flawless communication.
Which feels even more critical now with social media's power to mobilize huge numbers almost instantly.
That's the new variable, isn't it? How do lessons from Hillsborough or even Hathras apply when an event can go viral and attract unmanageable numbers with virtually zero warning? It's a huge challenge.
What has the public reaction been like, especially to this recent tribunal ruling?
While social media, particularly X, has been very active, you see a real mix of opinions. A lot of criticism aimed at RCB, people saying the planning was negligent, irresponsible.
Understandable.
But also, you see some sympathy for the police, acknowledging they were put in an incredibly tough spot by that sudden announcement. They didn't have the time or resources to handle what unfolded.
Did any specific comments stand out?
There was one post from someone in Bengaluru that seemed to capture a common feeling. It said something like, "Finally some clarity. RCB should have known better than to invite the whole city without a plan."
That hits hard. It really speaks to that demand for accountability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And for better management next time. People want to celebrate safely.
Absolutely. That's the bottom line. Safety has to be paramount.
So bringing it all together,
Hmm.
what's the main takeaway from the Bengaluru tragedy and this CCAT ruling?
I think it's a powerful, unavoidable reminder. Robust coordination, meticulous planning, prioritizing safety.
Mm.
These aren't optional extras for public events. They are fundamental, non-negotiable.
Especially with large crowds.
Especially then. It's about proactive prevention, not just reactive responses. Every detail matters, from the first permit application to the last person leaving safely, even as we've seen a single social media post.
And for you listening, maybe you attend concerts, sports matches, festivals. This whole situation gives you a different perspective, perhaps.
It should. It makes you realize the invisible scaffolding of planning and safety protocols that ideally underpins these events. And it underscores why it's so vital that those protocols are followed. Moments of collective joy shouldn't ever risk lives.
That joy shouldn't come at such a terrible cost.
Never. This whole incident really forces us to consider that invisible planning and how fragile it can be if communication breaks down. And it leaves us with a pretty challenging question, I think. In this world where social media can summon a crowd in minutes, how do we strike that balance? How do we allow for spontaneous community celebration, which is wonderful, but ensure, absolutely ensure, public safety is never compromised?
That is a challenging question, a powerful thought to leave everyone with. This deep dive into the Bengaluru Stampede. It's certainly heavy, but it's given us, and hopefully you, a lot to think about regarding excitement, responsibility, and safety in a modern world. We hope it's offered some clarity and perhaps some surprising insights into the layers behind events like these. Until next time, keep asking questions and keep that curiosity alive.